The first call came in early in the morning. It was logged at 6:42 a.m. A prepaid phone. No registered owner, no previous activity. The caller spoke calmly, not distressed, not rushed. He reported that there was a man standing outside an apartment building, not breaking in, not knocking, just standing there. He gave the address clearly. He described the street. He mentioned the weather accurately. Then he added something that didn't trigger any immediate response. He said, "I don't think he realizes he's visible." The dispatcher asked who the man was. The caller paused briefly, then said he didn't know. The call ended without escalation. No units were sent. The report was marked as informational. At the time, nothing about the call appeared unusual. 2 days later, another call came in. Different phone number, different provider, different city. The voice was the same, not similar, not close, identical, same cadence, same pacing, same controlled tone. This time, the caller reported suspicious activity near a parking structure. A man sitting in a car with the engine off. Lights on, door open. Again, no direct threat was described. When asked how long the man had been there, the caller said, "Long enough to notice." The dispatcher followed protocol, asked standard questions, received clear answers. When asked for his name, the caller gave one. It was not the same name used in the first call. Nothing flagged the system. The third call came later that week. A landline this time. The caller reported an argument inside a residential unit. Voices raised, objects possibly being moved. He did not describe violence. He did not ask for immediate assistance. When asked if anyone was in danger, he said, "It hasn't reached that point." The phrase stood out later. At the time, it didn't. The fourth call came from yet another number. The dispatcher on duty didn't recognize the voice, but someone listening back would have. The caller described a woman standing alone at a bus stop late at night. She appeared disoriented, not asking for help. He said something similar again. "She doesn't seem aware she's being watched." When asked who was watching her, the caller did not answer directly. He said, "It's possible no one is." By the fifth call, an internal pattern began to emerge. 5 different numbers, 5 different names, 5 different locations, same voice, same phrasing habits, same neutral delivery, always calm, always cooperative, never stayed on the line, never followed up. Each call, taken alone, made sense. Together, they didn't. An informal review was opened, not a case, not an investigation, just a request to pull recordings. When the calls were played back to back, the similarity was impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the sound of the voice, it was the structure. Location first, observation second. Risk implied, but never stated. Always stopping short of urgency. Then came the sixth call. This one mattered. The caller reported a disturbance behind a closed business, an alleyway, limited lighting. He said there were 2 people, one standing, one seated on the ground. No mention of a weapon, no request for immediate response. When asked what the seated person was doing, the caller said, "Not responding." A patrol unit was sent. They arrived 11 minutes later. They found one person. The other was gone. The individual on the ground was deceased. The time of death was estimated to be within minutes of the call. No witnesses were identified. No suspect description matched anyone nearby. The report made no mention of the earlier calls. At first, when the recording was reviewed later, something became difficult to ignore. The caller never described the scene as an emergency. He never said someone was hurt. He never asked for help. He described the situation as if the outcome was already fixed. The voice was compared to earlier calls. It was the same, a near-perfect match. One analyst noted something else. Across all calls, the caller never used "I." He never said, "I see." He never said, "I'm here." Only neutral constructions. There is. There appears to be. It seems. Always external. As if observing, not participating. The file was reviewed briefly. No charges were filed, no further action was taken. There was no evidence of wrongdoing by the caller. He had not lied. He had not withheld information. He had simply described situations that were not yet crimes. After that incident, the calls stopped. At least, calls matching that voice stopped being flagged. The system does not routinely check for voice similarity anymore. It was determined to be inefficient. The case remains archived, unresolved. Not because something went wrong, but because, technically, nothing did. The call came in just after midnight. The caller identified himself as a witness. He said he was not involved. He said he was at a safe distance. His voice was calm, even, controlled. He reported an assault near a closed transit platform. 2 individuals, one standing, one on the ground. The dispatcher asked if any weapons were visible. The caller said no. The dispatcher asked how close he was. The caller replied, "Close enough to observe, not close enough to interfere." At the time, that response didn't stand out. The caller continued. He described the location precisely. Concrete supports, poor lighting, limited visibility. He then described the person on the ground. Face down, left arm extended, right leg bent at an angle. The dispatcher asked how he could see that clearly. The caller answered, "There's enough ambient light." The explanation was accepted. Units were dispatched. They arrived 7 minutes later. The location matched the call. The person on the ground was deceased. Cause of death was later determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. The suspect was gone. Initially, the call was treated as routine. Witnesses often misinterpret what they see. Details are usually inconsistent. This one wasn't. When investigators reviewed the recording later, they noticed something unusual. The caller had described physical details that had not been confirmed at the time. Bleeding from the left side of the head, irregular breathing, a brief tremor in the victim's hand. The dispatcher had not asked about injuries. The caller had volunteered the information. During the medical examination, those details were confirmed. Left side cranial trauma. Abnormal respiratory response before death. Neurological movement in the hand. The accuracy was noted. No conclusion was drawn. The witness was located and interviewed the following day. He was cooperative. He confirmed he had made the call. When asked how he could describe injuries from a distance, he said, "I described what I observed." When asked if he had medical training, he said no. When asked if he had approached the victim, he said no. At that point, investigators returned to the scene. They noticed something that hadn't been documented earlier. The area where the assault occurred was partially obstructed. Concrete columns, service structures, metal railings. From the position the witness had indicated, the victim was not fully visible. Only fragments were. A reflective surface nearby showed partial movement, distorted, incomplete. The witness had not seen the victim directly. He had seen an outline, reflected motion, limited physical cues. When asked how he knew the person was seriously injured, the witness answered, "Because nothing adjusted after the impact." Investigators asked him to clarify. He said, "There was movement, then there wasn't. Nothing corrected." This explanation was reviewed against scene photographs. The lighting matched. The angles matched. It was possible to observe motion without seeing the event itself. What unsettled investigators was not the accuracy. It was the certainty. Most witnesses hesitate when describing incomplete information. This one did not. When asked why he didn't assume the person might recover, the witness replied, "There was no corrective motion." That phrase did not appear in the final report. The conclusion was procedural. The witness had not known the outcome. He had inferred it, quickly, correctly, earlier than confirmation allowed. There was no evidence he had caused the harm, no indication he had influenced the event. He had not intervened. He had not approached the scene. The call was reclassified, not as suspicious, as unusually precise. The case moved forward. A suspect was later identified through unrelated evidence. The witness was not charged. No further action was taken. The recording remains archived, not because it proves guilt, but because it documents a moment where observation reached certainty before the system was ready to accept it.